13 games into the regular season, the Washington Wizards have conducted a players-only meeting after the loss to the Brooklyn Nets. The Wizards have lost 11 straights. I don't think it means the locker room has been lost by Brian Keefe, but there might be some deeper concerns we need to talk about today here on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, you're locked on to the Washington Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, the Washington Wizards, every day. We're the #1 sports podcast network in the nation, alongside the DC sports content creating savant Abdullah Ayyubi. I'm Ben Strover, and I cover DC sports for 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Today, we are happy to be joined by our pal from Bullets Forever, Greg Finberg, back on the show with us. Greg, it's been some pretty turbulent times covering the team, to say the least. 11 straight L's.
Yeah, I've been on 3 times in the last couple weeks, and that's just been throughout the losing streak. So I think each time I come on, the losing streak grows. So maybe next time I'm on, they'll be at 16 for the 4th time in the last 3 seasons. So I don't know if it's just me and coming on the show, but the team's still losing. So obviously we have a lot to talk about. Excited for it. I appreciate you guys as always for having me on.
Of course, no better way to talk about the disaster that's been the basketball being played in this town than to bring you on to do so. All right, well, the players only meeting yesterday, and I can't say I'm entirely surprised that there was some kind of vocal interjection from within the organization. I wasn't sure if it was going to be from Brian Keefe talking with the team, some kind of public statement about the state of the team through him. But I'm not that surprised to see that there was a players only meeting. We got some more confirmation through reporting done through the Washington Post, Varun Shankar, who had a very good article. I recommend everybody go and read that. And what I've picked up on is that the meeting did not consist of anything to do with the coaching staff. That's what Varun reported, that Alex Sarr said there was no discussion of the coaching or anything like that. So I don't think it was a matter of has the team been lost from Brian Keefe at this point. But Greg, when you hear the team having a players-only meeting 13 games into the season here, do you see it as a bigger, deeper issue that's been brewing here? And, what do you make of this overall?
I mean, no matter if you're tanking or not, anytime you have a players-only meeting this early into the season, I don't think it's ever good. I think it's nice to see that they care. It's pretty evident that, Sarr and George and a lot of other guys care, and whether you think Middleton and McCollum care as much, it seems like they were some of the more vocal guys from based on the reporting in the players only meeting. But you never want to be at this spot 13 games in, and especially when you're if you're trying to win a title and you have a bad start, that makes sense. It's very interesting to see though that this team is clearly trying to tank, and they are even worse, I think, than they anticipated. They're even more non-competitive than they anticipated. And because of that, they're having a players-only meeting after 13 games. And I think it's easy, right, to say it's Brian Keefe and it's coaching, and I'm sure a lot of it is. Brian Keefe has lost this team a couple games this season, like the Dallas game, with just some poor coaching decisions, some poor rotations, lineups that don't make sense. He deserves a decent bit of the blame. But you also have to look at this team as a whole and take a step back and just see how bad they are in general. And that's on Keefe. But it's also on the players that aren't executing. It's on the rotations. It's on a plethora of things. And it's on, I think, maybe the mindset, going in where it's it's, Trey Johnson has probably never gone into a season in his life thinking, you know what, we're probably going to lose most of our games. And that's honestly okay for most people in the organization. That's got to be difficult. He played just 17 minutes last night, which I think is ridiculous. We'll talk about that probably later. But I was just looking at some stats because I was like, is this team as bad as I think that they've been? As somebody that hasn't missed a second, right, of this team, they are 1-12 through 13 games, which is dead last in the league. They have a 123.4 defensive rating, which is 29th, 107.3 offensive rating, 28th. They've given up nearly 130 points per game, which is 30th. And the next closest team, Sacramento, is at 124. So there's not it's a close thing at the bottom. They are giving up significantly more points per game. For Brian Keefe, who was like, this team's going to be bought in on defense, and they're clearly not. Their defense is atrocious. Brooklyn was open backdoor on every other possession, and the other ones they weren't open backdoor. It's because they were open from three. This team plays zero defense, and there's no adjusting on that end. 17 turnovers per game, 28th. A negative 16.1 net rating is 30th. They have a minus 217 point differential, which is dead last. That's awful. One of the worst in NBA history. And they have 9 double-digit losses, which is also dead last in the league. There's probably some other stats that I could probably read off, but I don't think it's necessary. I think my point has been made. They are bad. They're very bad. No matter who you blame, no matter if you're trying to tank or not, they're awful. And having a players-only meeting, I respect it. It's nice. Hopefully you see some change. It's funny because I cover Penn State hockey, and they lost, I think, by 6 goals to Michigan on Friday. And they had a players-only meeting. So it's funny, like both teams I'm covering have a players-only meeting. They came out the next night and beat the number 2 team in the nation, one of the best games they played all year. Will the Wizards do that? I don't think it can be measured based on wins and losses. Like if they come out in this 3-game stretch at Minnesota and they lose, no one's going to be like, the players-only meetings serve no purpose. It's about, do they look prepared to play? Do they actually have some sort of energy? Do they look like a team ready to defend and that cares about putting a good product on the floor and being competitive? We'll see. But I guess only time will tell.
Yeah, I think outside of the Penn State hockey team and probably like the high school musical basketball team, players only meetings, I can't imagine working, especially since you're going up against Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. And that's going to be a tough game. Anthony Edwards is a superstar. Let me ask you this, Greg. Everyone on social media, it's about firing Coach Brian Keefe. Is there a possibility where we see him gone before the trade deadline? I didn't think it was possible going into this season, but it's hard for me to defend a guy who, you just read off all those stats. I mean, how can you say that this team is developing in a way in year 3 of a rebuild?
Yeah, I get the fan frustration. Like I don't think Brian Keefe has done anything this year to be like, you know what, he should keep his job. But for the Wizards, you just got to kind of take a step back and say what does that do for the team? It seems like maybe Keefe isn't the best like X's and O's adjustments coach, but he's well liked. Like he was the interim, and it's pretty rare for an interim head coach to stick around as the head coach for a couple years. People view him as a bridge coach. Like that seems like it'll probably be the possibility. And if the Wizards end the season playing this way, it certainly should. I don't know if he should be back next year. Like if the plan really is like this is the last year of bottoming out, then you want to compete next season. There's championship head coaches. I mean, you've seen Mike Malone thrown around there. Like you're going to sit here and tell me that you want to compete and Brian Keefe's the better man for the job than Malone. There's guys like Sam Cassell that probably should have gotten a shot here earlier in his career. That was assistant here when the Wizards were good in 16, 17. That's a guy that could also get looked at. There's a bunch of good options out there. So at the end of the season, I think perfectly fine to assess it. I think that's probably what Will Dawkins and Michael Winger are going to do. Not Will Dawkins. Brian Keefe certainly hasn't done anything to be like, you know what, I should return, and here's what I'm going to put on tape to show that. But again, like you would just be going from, he's not an interim head coach, but he was your interim head coach, and I don't know if he's the long-term answer. You just be going from that to another interim. Like I'm sure they would just like fire Keefe and then put like David Vanderpool or one of the other lead assistants, and then you just got another interim head coach for the rest of the season. Like, does that change anything? No. Like, but also if they're like this, like if they lose like another 8-9 games in a row, what do you do at that point? Like maybe you have to have some conversations, but I don't think that's in the plans. I think, if you're Will Dawkins, you're like, Kyshawn looks great. Alex looks great. We could expect more from Bub, but we're losing a lot of games. We want to keep our pick. It's not like this season is a disaster in terms of the end goal, which is to have a bottom out team that keeps their pick in the bottom 4. And they're doing that. So, I'd be very surprised if they made a change midseason. But after the season, if this continues, I could get behind that. It would make sense.
Greg, it almost feels like this topic has become one of the most polarizing things amongst the Wizards fan base, and I've just noticed through surfing social media, everyone's got a different opinion on who's to blame for the situation. I think most people can agree, most sensible basketball fans would understand that everybody deserves like a large portion of the blame here. The players have to play better. The coaches have to do a better job. Keefe admitted that himself. He said that he hasn't done a good enough job. The players haven't done a good enough job. And everyone can acknowledge that in the situation. And when I try to like look at the, what the Wizards are trying to build here, you could look at it from like the glass half full perspective where you say, hey, Alex Sarr and Kyshawn George, like these two guys that you drafted a year ago have looked great. They seem like they've developed here in year number 2 under this head coach. You look at that as a positive going forward. But then you have like the glass half empty and says Bub Carrington's regressing. Everyone else on the roster doesn't look good at all. They don't look like they're building good habits. It doesn't look like they're winning. From your standpoint right here, are you more glass half full or glass half empty right now with the way things have gone this year?
It's a great question. I've always tried to be a glass half full type of guy. Like I've always tried to be optimistic. But I mentioned this on my podcast last night. It's hard to continue to allow this team to hide behind the shield of the rebuild. Like at a certain point, you got to see something. At a certain point, it can't just be like, okay, they're losing a lot of games, but that's what they want to do. And they're playing awful, but that's okay because they're losing games. You need to see something. Like you need to see some growth. And when it's the same stuff, like Kyshawn George is always in foul trouble and still turning the ball over through 13 games, no matter where Brian Keefe has put Bub Carrington, he hasn't found a role for him. He hasn't been able to unlock him this season. You obviously have the worst defense in the league. Your offense has struggled at times. You're still turning the ball over. It's hard to be a glass half full type of person when you're seeing all of these prolonged issues and they're not getting solved. I think if you want to be a glass half full, which I guess I'd say that's my answer because that's what I try to be. You never want to be like negative or always just down about a team. There's not really much to fandom if you're just going to be one of the people that says this season's going to be a disaster and then take a victory lap when you're right. Like that just, I don't know what that serves people. And I think the Wizards want fans to be optimistic. That's what they're trying to do with this rebuild. They have a bunch of young guys to be optimistic about, but like I said, when you're not seeing that from a nightly basis, it seems like you mentioned, Bub Carrington has regressed from year 1 to year 2. That's not what you want to see. Trey Johnson had some great games in the beginning, but it seems like they stopped running plays for him. He had some pin downs early, and they're not really doing too much to get him open. He struggled a bit as of late. You have Corey Kispert, Chris Middleton, CJ McCollum, who I don't think have been that bad, but it's ballooned when they're playing a lot of minutes over guys like Trey Johnson. AJ Johnson hasn't played this season. Brian Keefe just sometimes forgets that Tristan Vukcevic is a good player and plays him randomly. Like he played in the fourth quarter last night because Sarr was in foul trouble, but he also played a bunch in the beginning. So I would probably say I'm more glass half full just because like Sarr has been awesome. Kyshawn has been great. They have pieces and they're going to keep their pick in a really good draft class. So I think the draft class is probably what's gotten me. I watch a lot of college basketball. Like DeBanza looks awesome. Peterson looks great. The Boozers look good. This draft class is great. So you're losing all these games. You're going to keep your pick. You're the worst team in the league. You can't fall outside the top 5. You're going to get possibly a franchise-altering player. Those are what kind of keeps me in the glass half full. But if you're glass half empty, I'm not going to tell you you're delusional or you're wrong. You're probably right based on how some of these rebuilds have gone. Based on the trajectory of this one, I think it can go either way. This is kind of a big inflection point. And, let's see if the players-only meeting works. I don't know if it will, but at least they can.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they really have the personnel to make some sort of big turnaround or anything like that, but hopefully you can see them compete a little bit more and resolve some of the issues and bad habits they've been building. Let's take our first break. When we come back, we'll let AB chime in real quick, and then also I kind of wanted to bring up some of the other perspectives I got from some other Locked On hosts about their teams when they've had their own player-only meetings, so we'll touch that next. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, that's sad. Software as a service. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They help millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. What I love about Rippling is how it removes the bottlenecks in busy work that slows teams down. Everything from onboarding, from payroll to IT access, it runs automatically and perfectly in sync. It's seriously simple to use. It gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. Right now, you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNBA. Learn more at rippling.com/LockedOnNBA. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNBA for 6 months free. The episode is brought to you today by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement on this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to join in the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere. Prize Picks operates including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using Prize Picks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game more exciting. I like picking my favorite players like Mahomes, Steph Curry, and to see how these predictions play out. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph's points and threes and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineup from a loss. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 off in lineups with your first play and your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right.
I wanted to go back to the whole idea of the glass being half full, half empty. I've seen a lot of Wizards fans on social media, guys, talk about how this is rock bottom. And I think that's an overreaction. I think rock bottom is when you were paying Bradley Beal a lot of money to barely make the play-in. Now you have a lot of young guys who we've seen the talent. We've seen Kyshawn George, we've seen Alex Sarr. We think Trey Johnson could be really good if he's going out there and playing 20 to 25 plus minutes a game. But now it's, okay, what are we looking at? And losing to the Brooklyn Nets at home, 20-plus points without Cam Thomas. I mean, in year 3 of a rebuild, it just doesn't make any sense. It's hard, Greg, for me because I want this team to be really good. And it's also hard for Ben and I, just everyone in general covering this team, because how can we talk about this team without being too harsh? And how can we be positive when we're clearly stating all those stats that there just really hasn't been, as a team, development-wise, nothing is there. And right now, 1-12. I mean, I'm looking at the schedule, Greg. How many wins do you see before the trade deadline? I don't want to sound crazy right now, but it's all over the place because, again, you're playing Indiana soon. And I thought this Nets team 2 weeks ago, I circled it on my calendar saying this is going to be a game that you win. But, I mean, this Indiana game, I could see Pascal Siakam have a 30-plus point game against this defense.
I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember when I put out my season predictions, I think I had about 19 wins, and I had people telling me that I'm insane and like I should be in the mid 20s and high 20s, honestly. And play-in was a possibility after they beat Dallas. Like the end goal was always the end goal, which is to keep the pick. And like I knew they were going to be bad, and even last year, like they started 2-18, they still managed to win 18 games. So like once guys get traded, once people develop and you get better as a unit, they'll win I think more games in the second half than they do in the first half. But it is bad. Like you mentioned, you circled the Brooklyn game because you were like, this is probably one that they don't have to win, but like they should win realistically. Like
be competitive.
You shouldn't lose by 23 at home. That's the underlying theme, and they did. Just really really bad basketball. Like I mentioned, I had a bunch of people sending me messages that were at the game just saying how dead the arena was. I mean, I know you guys were there, but it seems like it's probably easy for this team to play on the road than it is at home, because at least on the road, like fans are excited and there's some juice. Versus at home, it's like I'm paying so that I could probably go to the game with like a friend or my family, get some good food, which is overpriced, by the way, and go out there and you watch the team for fun. Like there's nobody that's going to a Wizards game that's like, I get to watch my team maybe get a win. They haven't won, by the way. They haven't won at home since April 2nd of 2025. I think they've lost 8 in a row. Obviously, it's over the summer, so it's prolonged, but it's still been that long since fans have been able to go to a home game that they've won. I think they even lost their preseason home game. So if you want to include that, it's just it's not good. And to your question, AB, you asked about their next win. Like this 3-game road trip at Minnesota, at Toronto, at Chicago, they could win the last 2 games of that. Like I don't really know what to make of the Bulls and the Raptors, but they are better teams than the Wizards. I think that they will probably win those games. And so that's, what is that, 14 in a row. And then you mentioned the Indiana game. The Pacers, I think, are a lot better, obviously, in the record. They've had a lot of injuries. The difference between the Pacers and the Wizards at 1-12 is the Wizards are pretty much been fully healthy, apart from, Bilal missing a couple games, and Indiana missing a lot of their players. Halliburton, I think I don't know if Nebhard got hurt, but I know Neesmith got hurt. McConnell was out. So they are not the same. And if Siakam's playing, that they could win at any time. You have Milwaukee, Philadelphia, Boston, Atlanta, San Antonio. Like this could get to that point. It's crazy. Like they've had 3 16-game losing streaks. It seems like every time they hit 16 games, they win, because that also tied the franchise record from years ago. So maybe that's the goal. Like, let's get 16 again before we just say, hey, let's play basketball and win. It could balloon. Like, it could get to 20 games, and that's real, like, embarrassment territory. But nonetheless, like, the more they lose, honestly, like, the closer they get to keeping their pick. So I don't think they're, like, too concerned with the streak.
You know, it's funny you bring up the stuff with Capital One Arena, and I'll put this out there before I get to the point I wanted to bring up here. There were some people behind us like chirping throughout the entirety of the game. They were probably drinking and stuff like that, as you mentioned. People who aren't really that serious about the game. I heard I'd rather be a Hornets fan. We stink. CJ McCollum, you're washed. So I just want to put that out there. That's what some of the people were saying. And obviously, I don't think they're really saying that being super serious like they care. I think they're just doing it to do it at this point, because there are some definitely like real fans that we see in the arena that want to see the team win every single game. They're definitely frustrated by what's going on. So just to add to that point, I texted in the Locked On NBA hosts Twitter group chat. I said, if any of your teams have orchestrated a players-only meeting in the time that you've covered them, let me know. I'm trying to see how much weight this holds, what transpired after that. Danny Cunningham of Locked On Cavs, he said, I think every team that doesn't win 50-plus games has a players-only meeting at some point. We'll just never hear about it. And I can agree with that. Like, there's probably some truth to that, to an extent where, like, it comes out publicly usually is where it's, like, a little bit more concerning. The Locked On Pistons host said the last time the Pistons had a players-only meeting, they lost a record 28 straight games. A players-only meeting that caused the owner to fly in the next day and meet with the head coach. So that's an interesting one. The Warriors had one last year, and it was a big part of turning their season around, and Steve Kerr ain't getting canned. Just depends on the context of the team and its leaders, how much it matters. And that's like the basis I've tried to put this at. Like, context matters a lot in this situation, because the Warriors having a players-only meeting in that situation, like, yeah, like, it's not like Steve Kerr lost the locker room or they've lost belief in what's happening in Golden State, because everything's been great there for now 12 years. Same thing with the Dallas Mavericks. Well, this was 2 years ago before things really fell off the track, obviously, the last 8 months or so. In the 2024 season, the Wizards legend Markieff Morris led a players-only meeting that helped turn around the Mavericks team that got to the NBA Finals that year. So you can put in perspective that sometimes these things can work out for the better, but the context within the Wizards situation is definitely alarming. That frustration is kind of boiling over a little bit. We've killed the clock right here, so let's actually take this quick break, and we come back. Greg, I'll get your thoughts on that. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks, ETFs, options, futures, and crypto, all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from desktop with Robinhood's Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiet comes in. Rougiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know we sent you. Rougiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. I'll just get your thoughts on what I brought up with the other host bringing up the context of the situation. How do you view the context of what's happening here in D.C., Greg?
I mean, it's like the Pistons one that you mentioned. Like, it's a tanking team. Like, I realistically, like the Mavericks, the Warriors, like the results and how successful you view the meeting will be measured based on wins and losses and whether you make a deep run in the playoffs. And both of those teams, for what I know, the Mavericks made the finals. The Warriors won a playoff series last year when most people probably counted them out. That's success there. Like for the Pistons, for the Wizards, especially success from this meeting is not okay. They win a bunch of games. They go on a winning streak. It's will this team actually play competent basketball? Will they compete? Does it look like there's a change in habits? Are they playing better to defense? Are they playing harder? Do they look like they're bought in? Do they look like they care? Because some of these games, it's like, especially last night against Brooklyn, they were just playing basketball. It was like as if the score didn't matter. And I'm not saying that to like say these guys don't compete and they don't want to win games. That's not the case, but that's how it comes off when you're losing by that many points to an also bad team. The same things are happening that have happened the first 12 games of the season. That is frustrating for the fan base. And so obviously for the players, the coaching staff, that's frustrating. They had the players only meeting. I think the difference based on what you said, Ben, is how you measure success of the team meeting. And I think for the Wizards, it's not, they'll lost these next 3 games. That's fine if they do. That wouldn't mean it's not a successful meeting. It's, are they competing? Are they playing hard? Or are they still not playing defense? Are they still getting blown out? Are they non-competitive in the second half? Are the same mistakes plaguing them? Like, these are the measuring sticks that we're looking for, apart from just your usual wins and losses. The success you would measure maybe better teams like Dallas and Golden State.
Outside of coaching, Greg, a lot of people are blaming the lack of offensive creativity due to the fact that this team doesn't have a pure point guard. And maybe Bub Carrington would fill that role, but I think, and I understand it's early, I think the combo guard role is just what fits him. Do you think they'll address the point guard position at the deadline or any time this year, or do you think they'll ride out the whole year with just not a pure point guard on this roster?
I mean, I don't think Will Dawkins is dumb. Like, I think this is by design. Like, I'm sure he wanted Bub Carrington so badly to be the answer there, and they didn't give him much of a leash this year. It was what, 6 games that they pulled him, and it's not like he played good in the beginning, but they don't have a point guard on this roster. McCollum isn't that. Like, AJ Johnson maybe in 3-4 years, but he's not anywhere close. Branham doesn't play at all. Trey Johnson's your as pure 2 guard as you can find. They don't have a point guard. I think that's a ridiculous excuse as to why you're running a basic offense in the NBA. These guys are NBA players. Like, CJ McCollum is a capable runner of your offense. He did it with New Orleans. He did it at the end of his time in Portland. Sometimes CJ can do that. So Bub can even do that. But the offense is legitimately dribble handoffs and like backdoor cuts. And some flare screens. Like, it's a pick and roll to Kyshawn and Sarr. It's the most basic, boring, simple offense. And I don't know where that gets you. Whether you have a point guard or not, there are competent players that can run this offense on your team. At least try it. And it's just, someone actually messaged me that was at the game last night and was like, am I wrong for thinking this is the most boring offense I've ever seen? It seems like it's the same action every time. And he's not wrong. So to your point, AB, like, I think it is by design, and I doubt they'll address it at the deadline. I think this deadline is, again, they have a lot of cap space. It's to take on more bad contracts that they did with Smart last year for additional draft capital and young talent like they got with AJ Johnson last year. I think the point guard thing needs to be addressed this offseason. Like, if you're actually serious about competing next year, you need a true legit one. And like, if they get a good pick, that's pretty easy. Like, Michael Brown is really good. Obviously, Darren Peterson's great. I still think they should draft for fit. And I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself because these talks will probably happen down the line. We're doing mock drafts. But that needs to be addressed this offseason. I don't know if they'll do it at the deadline. Because again, like, they're not trying to right the ship right now. They're fine with these losses.
Greg, appreciate the perspective as always. God bless you digging up all the stats you do, because at this point, looking at the stats, it hurts. It hurts the soul a little bit. I don't even need to at times, because it's bad basketball. The stats are going to be bad when you look at it. But we always appreciate all the work you do and you coming on and providing your perspective.
Of course. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate you, AB. Always a pleasure to come on and talk with you guys about the Wizards. You guys are doing great as well. I've liked the segment you did on your last pod where you're like taking fans' comments. I think it's always nice. Now. Yeah. I think it's always nice to get their perspective too, because we cover the team, but they're watching the games and somehow sticking with them throughout this. So yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. Keep up the good work. You've been doing great.
You the same, my friend. Greg Finberg,
Thank
Bullets
you,
Forever, the Wizards podcast. Check him out on Twitter at Greg Finberg. That'll do it for us today here on Locked On Wizards. DC family, we thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NBA Fantasy Basketball podcast hosted by Josh Lloyd to get your lineup right. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the nation, where it's your team, the Washington Wizards, every day. DC family, stay in the fight. That's all I got for you.